Croeso, hello, welcome to the latest episode of Rob Ryan Red, the Wrexham podcast brought to you in association with Red 10 People Development. Now, there's a lot of drama following Wrexham these days, and this week it felt like murder on the Orient Express. On today's podcast, we'll look back at our latest home defeat. What went wrong? Is there an issue with the atmosphere at the Cae Ras? And we'll look ahead to two tantalising fixtures, a place in the Championship and a place at Wembley at stakes over the coming week. All that and more on today's episode of Triple R.
Rob Ryan Red.
Now, Nath, we said last week we would have been happy if Wrexham had taken 4 points from their last two matches. In the end, it was 3. Victory away at Sixfields, beating Northampton at the weekend, but defeat to inform Leyton Orient on Tuesday night. How are you feeling? What's the week been like for you from a Wrexham perspective?
Highs and lows. I thought very impressive against Northampton, albeit they, I don't want to just say they're a poor side because they did go and beat Huddersfield, who are still firmly in the mix. And they beat Mansfield, who have been very, very up and down. I was very pleased with how we played there. But I have to say, I think Leyton Orient probably the best team to come to the racecourse this season. I think they looked better than Birmingham. I think they look better than Stevenage. And it was a reminder of me of a few things, that the loan market is very valuable, as you see with Keeley in goal for Leyton Orient, Donnelly, who scored the fabulous goal. Now, I don't know if anybody missed this, but it's quite funny, really, that Leyton Orient boss Richie Wellens, who he was in the stands for the Wrexham game, but recently he decided to have a pop at Ange Postecoglou, and their best loan players, Leyton Orient, are from Tottenham. So I think he could learn a thing or two from Parky about what to say and when to say it. But you have to say that Leyton Orient schooled us, I thought, Rich. They were the better team from about 10 minutes in, I thought. Once Rathbone scored, I thought we never looked like scoring again until the kind of late flurry at the end. And, I don't want to fast forward too quickly this season, but that could be a playoff game in about 3 months. And, a lot would need to improve, I think, from our side to come out winners if we had to replay that game again in late May.
I agree with you fully on that. I think that there's a very difficult to analyse this game in the sense that whenever you lose, you're going to be a bit annoyed. You're going to be a bit ticked off because you've lost, particularly at home, because we're so spoilt with this insane home record, which is almost unsustainable, but we do sustain it to a degree, so it feels, warped in that regard as well. Leyton Orient, they kind of remind me of Doncaster last season. They are just the informed team. I would not want to be facing them home or away. They're very good. They've got some very good players in there with a lot of pedigree. Like you said, some excellent loanies as well. They were really defensively disciplined. They were heroic at the end as well. We would have scored a certain goal if not for Dominic Bull's header away from Stephen Fletcher in the last minute.
What header.
There was that goalmouth scramble. It was really exciting. I can't describe the feelings. I was in the tech end behind the goal for the match on Tuesday night, and that sort of excitement, the anxiety and the unsettlement in my tummy was pretty fun in a way, in a perverse sense that I'm watching Wrexham at home and there's a lot riding on it for a change. We'll come on to atmosphere later because we had an email about that.
Rich, it should have all been wrapped up there, shouldn't it? Really, I mean, they were pissing about with it. I thought they were taking the mickey out of us, really.
Yeah, and we were winning 1-0. We were winning 1-0, and there's also the flip side. And Parky said this after the game. Parky basically said Leyton Orient are a very good football team, but that doesn't take away from the fact that we fundamentally weren't good enough on the night either. And that is a key aspect of it. Both things can be true, that Leyton Orient were very good and worthy of the win, but we weren't worthy of the victory because we underperformed. And from a Wrexham point of view, I don't want to come across as this sort of spoiled, entitled fan. I think that's part of the reason why the home atmosphere has been so crap all season. is because we just expect to win and roll over any team, and there's no real jeopardy, and we can get quite whiny for no real reason. I think every time the goalkeeper gets the ball, the crowd are on them saying, "Why aren't you throwing it? Why aren't you throwing it? Panic, be erratic, go on. We need urgency, urgency." Urgency is not a word I want from my footballers. I want calm serenity. I want them to take their time. And every time we played a pass backwards on Tuesday night, there was these moans and these groans. It's like, no, keeping the ball's fine. Keep the ball. That's what we've not been doing. I don't care if Ollie Rathbone turns and plays the ball back 10 yards because we keep in possession. I'd rather have that than lumping it forward aimlessly for 45 minutes as we did so often. So, I do think that the atmosphere was dreadful on Tuesday night. Orient fans were superb, outsung us from start to end, basically. It was embarrassing. That's kind of just what happens at Wrexham game.
Rich, we are going to get onto the atmosphere and why it's not quite clicking, because there are a lot of comments about that. I just wanted to read some of the comments out from people. I put out a post saying back-to-back home league defeats. And really, if you include the Virtue Trophy game against Bolton, I think we've had three really poor home performances there where we haven't looked creative at all. We haven't really looked like, sort of creating much, scoring much. So a lot of comments. Tom Forrett put, real problem at the moment at home. Soon as not playing our best, fans start being negative. Get a grip. Joey's put no midfield in the second half. Don't know how with 5 on the pitch. Crowd need to stop booing. We are still third. Parky came off in disgust at the end. Gareth put, nothing's wrong. If someone told me at the start of the season we'd be third in League One in February, I'd have taken it. Not nice losing, but still in the mix. Plenty to play for. That was Gareth Roberts. Gareth Davis put, it's almost like Mullin and Palmer weren't the issue at all. Problem is lack of creativity throughout. Wasted millions on strikers who won't get the ball. Zach put, for me, a midfield of Dobson, James and Rathbone isn't working well. Greatly concerning that Lee isn't available. Who knows for how long? Obviously, we had an update from Lee. We'll get onto that shortly about his car crash. Feels like this team is missing a creative number 10, which Richard said on numerous occasions about missing out on John McAtee in the summer and how that's never really been rectified ever since. View from Le Macron put, main issue is the insistence to persist with Matty James. If he's meant to be the ball player, how are we resorting to hooked, aimless balls or punts from Howard? He's too slow and offers next to nothing. Palmer holds it up better than Rodriguez and is more mobile. 15 grand a week for that. I'll do 2 more. Don Pratt said, frustrating to lose, especially at home, but that's a top of the table League One game. Not moving into space fast enough for easier passes, then too desperate to kick the ball long. Ollie Palmer is out. There's no target man up there anymore. Dobson at centre mid. And the last one I'll do is Liam Fivio, I probably got that wrong, who said, got to play Cannon when Lee isn't there. Also think we're much better progressing the ball with O'Connor at the back. Move Lewis Brunt into the middle, put O'Connor on the left of the 3, have Max on the other side. Longman or Revan need more chances too because pace causes problems and our best outlet is our width. There were loads of replies, so sorry I can't get to all of them. Jamie did end up describing our new signing, saying they may as well be an air traffic controller for the amount of time the ball was launched aimlessly into outer space, which I didn't get to. But the issue specifically I wanted to get to, Rich, that I tweeted and I think I put out on our Blue Sky as well, and we sort of alluded to it last week, is I think, much like we saw the end of Elliot Lee and Ollie Palmer and we said we cannot see that again, and we haven't and probably won't, I'm struggling to see how you can see Dobson and James again. I'm really, really struggling to see how, at the start of the season after Birmingham, we said maybe 2 players like that is a good thing. It gives you extra security. I didn't think we looked that secure and we didn't offer, anything really going forward. So I'm not sure what people can see in that midfield that makes it in any way worthwhile to persist with.
I would still argue there's a place for it in away games. If we were playing Birmingham next week or on Saturday, I'd still quite like that. I'm not going to suddenly say I don't want it ever, because I do think, and maybe, if there's an EFL Trophy final, I wouldn't begrudge it so much just because it nullifies their specific threat. What I would say is home games, it's unacceptable, because particularly about Elliot Lee, who the hell is playing those through balls? Who's breaking the lines? The answer is no one. So you just launch it long, the ball comes down with bloody mist on it. There is nothing that being created in midfield. Andy Cannon is essential in that setup. I would say on the flip side, I actually thought Matty James was better than Dobson on Tuesday night. From what I saw, and I've not rewatched the game back, just what I saw in the tech end, I thought Matty James made some crucial interceptions, broke up play quite well, but then what else is he going to do? It's fine to have one player in the midfield who breaks up play, is a nuisance, is a pest, but we need one player doing that and two players progressing the ball, breaking the lines, driving the ball forward, taking it on. And we were just being ran through too easily on Tuesday night, and there was no creativity. And again, it kind of stems to back. And whenever we lose a game, it's very easy for us to suddenly become whiny, entitled fans. But we've said this since season 1 of the takeover. We've said it, continuously on the podcast. There is that fundamental question of Phil Parkinson's tactics. And to a degree, National League and League Two, we just had better players. And that showed. There were so many games where we didn't play that well, but we just had better players and won. And in League One, we've still been very good. We've exceeded expectation this season. So Parky isn't suddenly a bad manager. And when we win games, he doesn't get the credit he deserves. But on the flip side, I do think there is valid criticism of how one-dimensional we come across at times. And Tuesday night exacerbated that for us. I just thought we were so clueless and aimless and had no idea what we were doing. I don't believe this revisionism that Mullin and Palmer weren't the problem initially. Palmer doesn't score goals. Mullin doesn't score many either at this level. I think the strike force is much better now. They seem to read the game a lot better. They make more intelligent runs. Sam Smith looks excellent. But again, I think the issue we saw on Tuesday night was because there's no creativity in midfield, he was drifting out wide. He was just not in the right positions because he was working so hard to get the ball. And another part I want to pick up on, it was a good point whoever made it on the replies to that post. Why on earth is every other position seems to be up for grabs in the starting lineup other than the wing backs? It feels like if you have a bad game at goalkeeper, centre back, midfield, striker, you can get dropped. It feels like no matter how badly you play at wing back, you keep your position. I thought Barnett and McLean were both really poor on Tuesday night. And I was glad to see that the sub came. You could have flipped a coin whether it was Barney or McLean who came off for Longman. But Revan and Longman, that is quite exciting. Maybe it's just because they've not been tried yet and we've not had time to criticise them. But surely there's got to be an allowance there for there to be a change at wing back.
We've still got time to criticise. There's still many weeks left of the season, so we've still got time to dig out Ryan Longman for his throw not being long enough. Who knew Ryan Longman had a long throw? I mean, very fitting. And it was quite funny that I was saying to my family was watching it because I didn't get to go. I was watching it on TV.
Yeah, scandalous that. You were celebrating a family birthday.
I know. Happy birthday to my mum, belatedly. But yeah, so I wasn't there at the race course, unfortunately. But I was saying to my mum, dad and sister that we could just do with that. At this point in the game, we could just do with that Ben Tozer arrow. Because I know we moved away from that and we did progress our football. But it is good to just get it in the mixer when you need it at moments like that. You got Fletcher on there. You got Max in there. Should say congratulations to Max. 22 years old, 100 league appearances for Wrexham. Was it 100 league appearances? Yeah, staggering, really. But anyway, so Longman starts chucking the balls in. I think my point was going to be just before that, though. You're talking about midfield and you said that James is a bit better than Dobson. I don't want to act like Dobson's not had good games since he's kind of gone out into the kind of secondary role and not the deeper line role, because against Birmingham, I thought he was fabulous. And did he win man of the match in that game? I think he did actually officially win man of the match on that Sky game at the racecourse. Yeah. So he has had good games. But I thought it was quite telling afterwards that basically Parky's assessment was we didn't get the ball to Ollie Rathbone enough, because basically he's your only creative midfielder on the pitch. Dobson is industrious, but I don't think he's best suited. I don't think you're maximising George Dobson in that kind of shuttle role, I call it, alongside. You've basically got a deeper line midfielder and then two shuttlers, really, unless you've got an Elliot Lee who is even more advanced. And hopefully Lee, comes back in. And if it's Cannon, maybe he can be more advanced, or you want it to be Rathbone. But whoever it is, it's largely two shuttlers who are just everywhere. And I get that Dobson has a good engine, Rathbone has a great engine, and seemingly he has a Cruyff turn in him as well, because that was a brilliant moment that seemed to have some people standing on their feet from what I could see. But I'm Look, there's what is there now? 16 games left. I think there's about 9 away from home and 7 at home. There are going to be tough games. You're looking away at Huddersfield, tough game. Whatever you think of Huddersfield's recent form, away at Wickham, tough game. I think away at Reading is a tough game. Where else have we got to go? You would expect us to say dominate at somewhere like an Exeter, somewhere like a Cambridge. You would like to see us take the game to them a la Northampton. But there are going to be games, like I say, Huddersfield, Reading, Wickham, those, Lincoln, even on the last day that goes down to it, they are tough games. Let's make no bones about it. They are tough games where you need a different setup. But there are also quite a few home games coming up. I'm looking at Burton. I'm looking at even Bolton coming up at the weekend. I've long said all season, I don't think they are that good a team. We beat them in the Virtue Trophy the other night, and I thought we were poor on the night. So what I'm saying is, I really hope that Parky, and he's obviously got, his credit is overflowing from the bank. I hope he looks at that on Tuesday night and goes, yes, it's a very good Leyton Orient team. They are probably the informed team in the playoffs. Probably Orient, Charlton and Stockport on form are going to be really optimistic with how the playoffs could go for them if they can all get in. I hope he looks at that and goes, we've not just been poor once. It wasn't a one-off. We weren't very good against Stevenage either. And I know we could have scored late against Leyton Orient to equalise. I know we could have scored late against Stevenage to equalise. We've lost both games. We've got away with it against Bolton. We've got away with it quite often at home. I'm looking at Blackpool. I'm looking at Wigan. There are other games I'm forgetting. We're in a really key point in the season now. It was this time a year ago when Paul Mullin really came big for us and fired us to promotion. Now, if that's going to be Sam Smith or that's going to be Jay Rodriguez, who actually I think kind of struggled in the first few games that I've seen, feeding off scraps, yes. But the general point is, if we're going to get over the line in the playoffs, in the Virtue Trophy, second, whatever it may be, you've got to get the ball into those strikers, and that means a change in midfield for me. You can't keep persisting with this. And actually, I agree with you. I don't think you can keep persisting with the same wing-backs if the output is going to be so poor.
Well, what I would say on this again is that, the midfield that we were criticising Tuesday night, that's the same midfield that played against Birmingham at home, got the 1-1 draw. So, there is a place for it against certain opposition. Wasn't the case on Tuesday night. In terms of the wing-backs, I thought their number 3, Leyton Orient, he was excellent. He properly did a job on Barney. And, you might have played Longman there on the right, and he might not have had much joy either. So it's not criticism per se just of the wingers they played poor. They did play bad, but, got to give credit to the defender as well. Rodriguez, I do think he'll come good because he's so savvy, reads the game so well. It almost felt like he was playing as a number 10 on Tuesday night. It felt like we were playing with one lone striker, which just didn't work whatsoever. I want to see going forward, little and large. I want to see Smith and Marriott, basically. That's what I want to see going forward. That's kind of my new favourite partnership until they fail to score against Mansfield, and I say they should never play for this club again. Defence is an interesting one as well. I know we had a suggested lineup sent to us as well, and we had a reply to that tweet. I actually think Max long-term could be a central centre-back, and then that way you could have O'Connor on the left centre-back, Brunt on the right centre-back. Midfield, as we've said, Nath, Elliot Lee obviously out for a while. We've got the car crash. You can read out his Instagram post maybe in a second on that. What do we do for now? That's kind of what I want to ask you. Is it because conversely, I know I've said Matty James was better on Tuesday night. I still do think Dobson just covers more ground, so should be in the midfield. Are we go again saying, look, for this weekend it's got to be Dobson, Cannon, and Rathbone, even though we're away at Mansfield? Is that what you're saying for midfield?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm firmly of the belief that with the tools available, I'm going to read Elliot Lee's post out because it doesn't sound like he's going to be rushed back anytime soon. I just think the best balance, the best performances I've seen from George Dobson outside of that one game against Birmingham has been as the deep lying player. So I think that is the way to go. With Dobson there, Rathbone, as I said, I think Rathbone's the only lock in that midfield right now. We said that last week. I would go Dobson and I would go Cannon. I just think you need to freshen up on the back of that should have been 3 or 4-1 Leyton Orient on the night, really. And I actually got a message from a Leyton Orient friend of mine who went up, and he said, what was most striking about Wrexham? And he did the classic thing about moaning about the ref and thought the ref was biased to Wrexham, yada, yada. But the point I took away from this long voice note that he sent me was that he was quite surprised about the lack of identity in this Wrexham team. There isn't a clear formula for success. In his opinion, he's only watched us in 2 games. The home game at Leyton Orient where we drew 0-0. I think we were quite fortunate that day as well, but we came away and said, look, they're going to be a good team. This is a good point. And then obviously Tuesday night where I think we got toyed with really, and a lot of players were below the level.
How they didn't score that third at the end with their number 7, they're pissing about the ball in the box.
That's what I think. I think
sent off.
I thought they were taking the mick out of us really with how lackadaisical they were with that, and that's the type of thing that stings more for me. The defeat, you're going to lose games. I wasn't overly surprised that Leyton Orient came and beat us. In truth, they are a very good football team. They nearly beat Man City. It took Phil Foden and Kevin De Bruyne coming on for Man City to get the better of them. So I wasn't necessarily surprised, but the manner of it. You mentioned about Elliot Lee. He put out some gruesome pictures in terms of his car is completely smashed to pieces. It looks like a Range Rover. And this is what he put to go with it. This was 8 hours ago. Recording late on the Wednesday night. He put last Tuesday night, which was after the Virtue Trophy game against Bolton. He put, I found out just how fragile life is, and in the blink of an eye, through no fault of your own, it has the potential to change drastically. Thankfully, I had someone looking over me, but I'm well aware of how different the outcome could have been. It has been overwhelming to see how much people care and the love and support I have around me with my family and friends. It has been a tough week, but I'm very lucky and very grateful. Thank you to the emergency services for all the help and for all the kind messages I've received. It means a lot. And lastly, a huge thank you to Kevin Mulholland and who is that? Ada MM and my partner for rushing to my aid and spending all night in the hospital with me, hoping to be back on the pitch ASAP. A lot of messages of support. Love heart from Wrexham's account, Anthony Ford, with some prayer hands. Alan Shearer's even given his support as well. Obviously good friends with Elliot Lee's dad, Rob Lee. Parky basically came out and said he's had some bruised ribs. The trauma of the incident, I mean, it's a head-on collision. The car is completely written off. It's important as well. I think we've seen over the years, Rich, how there's plenty more things bigger than football. And yes, I know that James McLean came back, but that was a different type of collision. That was, severe, but not to the case where he ended up being admitted to hospital like Elliot Lee was. I speak for both of us. We wish Elliot a speedy recovery, take as long as he needs. There are far more important things than football and a promotion bid. And I think, a crash for one of your top players or any player really does put that into grave perspective. But he sounds like he's on the mend. Which is the main thing. So glad he's okay. Glad he's been able to come out of it unscathed, and we'll see what happens in terms of coming back. That's all I've got to say on Elliot Lee.
Yeah, absolutely. Whenever he feels ready to do so, which I'm sure Parky will be, well on top of. We've said this before in terms of the other sort of personal issues players have had off the pitch, and Parky always comes across as an absolute gentleman and someone who really does understand that. Look, yes, we talk in this weird, complex bubble of football where everything seems so important, but he always puts sort of family issues and personal issues well above what happens on the pitch, and ultimately that is all that matters. So yeah, again, our love and our thoughts with him, and hopefully everyone involved in that accident can get back on the mend as quickly as possible. And again, from a selfish and perverse point of view, Wrexham probably do need him, because again, he's a player who we've criticised quite a lot this season, and we said that is he good enough to play? And I feel like we have missed him in recent weeks as well. The way that we said that he sort of speeds up play, has that direct approach in midfield, the connectivity that he has as well. It's going to be very interesting to see the Wrexham team that is fielded if and when Parky has that luxury of a full strength side before the end of the season, really. And that kind of brings us loosely onto the topic we said last week, where we spoke about our sort of personal strongest 11. And again, to show how fickle football fans are, I even changed mine last night during the match. We've got a very heated WhatsApp group in which I think there's like an unwritten rule, isn't there, that we can say anything we want during the match, and then we all just forget our criticism of players when they inevitably go and sort of score a goal or whatever. It's very short-lived.
For sure.
So this is what I said at 8:30 on Tuesday night. Would that have been half time? I think it was, actually. This was at half time on Tuesday night. I said, I really want to see this team going forward. Okonkwo in goal, a back three of Cleworth, Scar and Brunt, which I've subsequently changed to Cleworth, Brunt and O'Connor. Midfield three of Dobson, Cannon and Rathbone. I want to see Longman and McLean on the wings, because obviously at that time Barnett was playing worse. And then Smith and Rodriguez up top. And we had an email this week.
Which you've now changed to Smith and Marriott.
Yeah, probably, exactly. That's how fickle football fans are. And we're journalists as well, so maybe we'd like to think that we've got ourselves some sort of superiority over people.
Well, Rich, should I round out the first section with another Rich's team? But yes. Richard Froome sent his team in. And by all means, you can send your teams into us, robryanred@gmail.com if you want to, or leave them in the YouTube comments or the Spotify comments, Apple Podcasts, whatever you want to do. Rich Froome, then, different Rich, not Rich Fay. Rich F again, maybe this is the sort of alias. But he put, "Hi guys, after watching a mixed week of games, I've been having to think about what my ideal team would be, and it is as follows: Arthur Okonkwo in goal, Ryan Barnett right wing back, Owen O'Connell at right centre back, George Evans as the central centre back, Lewis Brunt at left centre back, and Ryan Longman at left wing back." So that's Brunt, Evans, O'Connell as a back three. His midfield is Dobson, Rathbone, Lee, and his front two are Smith and Mullin. His bench, Callum Burton, who we should say congratulations to, because after 69 days sidelined, he's obviously had surgery as well. He is back on the grass. I know his partner Daisy was delighted for him and all the hard work he's put in. So I just want to say kudos to Callum Burton for that. He's making his return. Or he's stepping up his return. Callum Burton on the bench, Howard if unfit, and his bench would be Max Cleworth, Tom O'Connor, James McLean, Andy Cannon, Jay Rodriguez, and Stephen Fletcher. Richport, I think it's time to put Okonkwo back in goal after his strong performances in the Virtue Trophy. Nothing against Howard, but he was third choice initially for a reason. Longman and Barnett would offer a huge amount on the flanks, with the three centre-backs giving us a huge amount of ability to play out from the back. I've seen enough of James and Dobson to know it doesn't work, but would prefer to see Dobson back at defensive midfield where he's played his best football. Up front, I'd love to see Mullin given a go in this setup, especially playing with Smith, who he played with when Cambridge won promotion to League Two. I really do feel he and Parky need to make up to give us our best possible front two. So let us know. You've heard Rich Bay's team. You've heard Rich Froome's team. Mine was last week. I'm not going to dither on my selection. So you can let us know, robryanred@gmail.com or robryanred on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, X, Blue Sky, wherever you can think of, on all of them. So let us know who you would have in your dream team and your bench.
Now, Nath, another talking point we've had lots of correspondence about this week has been the goalkeeping situation. Arthur Okonkwo on the bench again against Leyton Orient on Tuesday night. I think as soon as the team dropped, I sent a message in this, aforementioned WhatsApp group saying, "Why is Mark Howard still in goal?" Worth mentioning, Mark Howard played absolutely fine on Tuesday night, to be fair to him, and it was his fantastic clearance down the end of the pitch that set up Marriott that got Pratley sent off. I actually think Howard's distribution was better than Okonkwo's, although there were some horrendous clearances as well from him that went straight out of play, put ourselves under danger. But there was a couple of good moments that we maybe don't always get with Okonkwo. But for lots of us, the black and white is Mark Howard was deemed not good enough in non-league. That's why we went out and signed Ben Foster after that, was it Maidenhead game, where we, cocked that up and almost threw away promotion to League Two that season. Yet 2 seasons on, Mark Howard, who was basically deemed third choice in National League, was sort of third choice in League Two, is now first choice in League One. Like I said, the caveat is the injury to Burton, but Okonkwo's been on the bench. He was horrendous against Stevenage. Do you think that the dropping of Okonkwo has been a bit over the top, or do you think there must be kind of reasons behind the scenes that he isn't quite fully fit or maybe lacking in confidence for that still to be the case. Because, again, it feels harsh to blame Howard because he's not done anything wrong since being recalled to the team. It's just I kind of feel like there's a matter of time before he does become even more of a talking point.
I want to caveat my comments by saying Howard was great against Northampton. He got the assist for Sam Smith's goal. His distribution is better. Right now, at this point in their careers, his distribution is better than Arthur Okonkwo's. But I'm still struggling to see reasons to persist with Howard because he's not the future. And I know we've said time and time again that it's about the here and now. I just think Okonkwo is a better option. Now, you look at the Leyton Orient goals, neither keeper was saving the Donnelly strike from the edge of the area. The first goal, Kelman, does he get down a bit slower? Does the goalkeeper get down a bit slow there, or am I being a bit harsh? Maybe I'm being a bit harsh.
Yeah. What annoyed me more about the Kelman goal was how easy the throw-in was for Leyton Orient. And we talk about restarts, and again, this might come into atmosphere. Just keeping the ball is all you need to do from that. But the throw-in was unchallenged. They kind of worked the ball into the box quite easily, it seemed, and the shot was good. I would not blame Howard at all for the first goal.
I just think, Rich, that Okonkwo had a really poor night against Stevenage. He wouldn't argue that. You know, one of the goals went straight through his hands. I get that. But he's a young player that I think by taking him out, some will say, well, maybe his wrist hasn't fully healed up yet. Maybe you're, protecting him a little bit, giving him more time to recover. But as you say, you go into Mansfield on Sunday and you say, well, Mark Howard hasn't really made a lot of mistakes and we're blaming them more in the defence. So then you sort of have to persist with Howard. But if we had one game tomorrow, if we were to go to Wembley tomorrow, and let's knock on wood that we're not jinxing that, but I would want Okonkwo in goal. So I don't really see what you're doing by just having him sat on the sidelines gathering dust. Goalkeepers need reps, in my opinion, and they need routine and they need to keep feeling the grass, really. Do you know what I mean? And keep diving and keep making saves. And I just think sort of having Okonkwo sat on the sidelines, for me, isn't the answer, really, for the remainder of the season. But I know that from what I can see on social media, there are a lot of people that are very, very high on Mark Howard. But for me, I think you've got to be ruthless and you've got to pick your best players. And I don't think even now, even with Okonkwo having that rick in him, I still think we're not selecting our best goalkeeper at this moment.
Yeah. I'd also say as well that if we are dropping players every time they make a mistake, if that's the precedence that's been set with Okonkwo, most of the team could get dropped a lot quicker than they have been doing this season. That it is the quirk of being a goalkeeper that you can make one mistake and it is so costly to the team. But a goalkeeper howler is only as costly as missing a sitter or making a poor decision in midfield, giving the ball away in a key area. But the culpability and the consequences are a lot more for if Okonkwo makes a mistake. And for most of the season, he's been absolutely fine. Do we
as fans trust any of our goalkeepers? Do you think?
Yeah, who's the last goalkeeper I trusted, fully trusted? Maybe Leighton. I don't remember Leighton making mistakes.
At the back end of that National League title win, did you fully trusted Ben Foster? No, I really had a lot of faith in Ben. Not in League Two, but in that National League run, I felt like the game was so easy for him. I thought in those.
Not after Halifax away. He was atrocious at Halifax away.
He was that day. But
my unpopular opinion is Ben Foster only played good for us twice when he re-signed. Barnet away,
Barnet, Notts County.
And the other games most of them were so straightforward, he didn't have anything to do. And the other games, anyone else could have done the job he did. But that's not the point. I would say the only keeper I've fully sort of trusted is Rob Leighton. But the injuries he succumbed to them. And then before that, there's not another one in the non-league.
Do you know what I mean? I think I wonder if
Dan Backman, I trusted.
I just wonder you didn't trust John Flatt back in the day. I wonder.
Luke Covington. Now he's someone I trusted.
Was it John Flatt that played away at Stoke when we nearly knocked them out? Yeah. God, every time I think of that, I think of the little back and forth row I got into on the radio with Ian Wright, who said we should just
Oh,
be
yeah.
grateful to be there.
I'm
Anyway, we're
pretty
getting
sure that
sidetracked.
anniversary season we had 4 or 5 goalkeepers because I think we had Coughlin, Flat, Coddington, Backman, and someone else. Maybe 4 or 5.
Someone will let us know in the comments. But I think, I don't think everybody thinks this. Goalkeepers set the tone for the entire team. Like if you are defenders and you have a goalkeeper behind you that you fully trust, I think defenders can relax a little bit.
Yeah.
When they don't trust the goalkeepers, they look a bit more edgy. They don't quite want to take that touch. They don't want to play it back because they know your distribution's poor. And I just wonder right now is the goalkeeper most of the fans trust the most the one who's had surgery and is injured? And,
Yeah.
Is he the goalkeeper? Is Callum Burton the goalkeeper that if everybody was fit, he would be the one who trusts the most? Or is it with Okonkwo, we've just got recency bias in terms of the last couple of games where he's maybe had a couple of poor performances? And with Howard, are we just brainwashed into thinking about that Maidenhead game and that National League season and going, well, we've never allowed that reputation to change after he kind of was made surplus, was made surplus to requirements? Because you have to say that the fact he's still stuck around and has been a real club man, I think he's super popular with the rest of the dressing room. And I don't know. I don't think there's a mistrust from the players in Howard. I just think, much like Okonkwo, I think the fans are very jittery every time they get on the ball and kind of talk of urgency and get it gone and get rid of it. And I don't know. The goalkeeper's a funny old situation when it shouldn't be, really.
Yeah, I think you made a good point there. Because I maybe would admit that's my flaw on it, that I do associate Mark Howard with the back end of the National League season, when the fact is he played most of the games in that promotion campaign and was absolutely fine. And we kind of take it for granted, and we can look with rose-tinted glasses at every other goalkeeper who had maybe higher highs but much lower lows than Mark Howard had. And, it's a very complex one because, by virtue of it, he's been fine in the first team. So why should we have to even worry about him? And I think what you said, there's a very good point in terms of trust. Do the players fundamentally trust Okonkwo because his distribution isn't quite good enough? I still think it's an area of his game he can improve. He's got, youth on the side. I'd like to think he will get better. But, at what point can we sort of do that? It's a really interesting debate. I would love to know what people thinking, do have these thoughts on this debate, because again, I'm not speaking for every Wrexham fan, but I do think there'll be Wrexham fans who share my belief that they kind of just associate Mark Howard with struggles and mistakes, when the recent track record isn't that whatsoever. He's not really had a mistake since then that I can think of, and he has played a decent amount of games in the cups and stuff as well. So yeah, let us know. What do you think of the goalkeeper debate? Do you think we are being over analytical of it? Do you think it is just Mark Howard's position now to lose, or do you think, look, we fought so hard for Okonkwo, he kind of was our signing of the season because there was a lot of competition to get him, and now he's not starting games for Wrexham? So yeah, let us know. Do you think Okonkwo should be starting games again this weekend? Like, should he just go back into the team if he's fully fit to do so, or do you think it's a case of playing Howard until there's a reason to swap him out? Let us know. RobRyanRed@gmail.com. Comment on the YouTube video when it's out. Let us know on Spotify, Apple Music, and at our email address as well. Rob Ryan Red. Nathan Sutton, Rich Bay. Nath, we mentioned atmosphere earlier in the podcast. We had an email this week from Nigel Coulton, who I believe sits in the tech end with me. He said, "Hi guys, just wanted to get your thoughts on this. So apart from the poor performance against Leyton Orient, one of the main takeaways seemed to be the poor atmosphere again. There have only been a few home games this season where the atmosphere has been bouncing. Ticket sales also seem to have dropped off, which never helps. Poor performance by the team doesn't help, i.e. last night. However, we always backed the boys and we were loud no matter what. So what's changed? Last night, even before kickoff, you knew the atmosphere was going to be rubbish. Upper tech end always tried to get the atmosphere going. Manny on the drum leading as always. So what's changed? Is this an open question for debate? One thing, as a season ticket who sits in the up at Tech End near the away fans. It's always very amusing from people from the Cold Road and other parts comment how poor the atmosphere was. We need to back the boys now more than ever. UTST, and that's not up the supporters' trust. Yeah, Nath, again, it's difficult for me because I only sit in the upper Tech End, so I, same as Nigel, only have this kind of like amplified view of the atmosphere because we're very close to the away end and we're behind the goal, so you get those sort of surges in atmosphere more than ever. It did just feel very flat again on Tuesday night. We've gone over this quite a lot, I think, on the podcast. Hopefully,
I edited out of one of them early in the season because I felt like I felt like it was a little bit harsh. I was sitting in the lager stand towards the corner flag, between the corner flag and the temporary cop, and and I couldn't believe really how quiet it was. And again, we won that day, so I did edit that out of the podcast. I mean, I've been at games this season where the people next to me have spent most of it talking about Liverpool's upcoming transfer window. And I've spent a lot of it looking at other scores and just chatting as you would in the pub. It's like the conversation's carried on. Now, I don't want to be hypocritical because there are games where I'm tweeting away and trying to keep people updated who aren't at the games, who can't watch the games. So that'd be an easy thing to throw back in my face. But I think the general consensus for the first time in a while was that the atmosphere was poor. And I wasn't there, and I could only go off the broadcast. And I actually had people texting me that they said they couldn't believe how quiet it was on the broadcast. Normally, you can sort of get a sense of the crowd and the racecourse roar, as Adam Summerton called it that time Mendy scored against Notts County. There's that racecourse roar again, a famous bit of commentary. I actually don't think the attendance at home has been that good for a while now. And I'm not sure it is just entitlement. I don't subscribe to it just being that. Yes, we've been good at home. Yes, we've turned up on occasion with an expectation. I think maybe more so in that Stevenage game. I just wonder if there's that much turnover of people going. The temporary cop is nigh on impossible to get anything going in. I've sat in there a few times. No roof in there, noise just vanishes, and it isn't a place where I've seen people really rally to get the noise going. It's difficult to do. I've sat in the Mould Road. There are pockets of that stand that are loud, and there are pockets that are not. Again, that's not to be too disparaging. The Tech End is the noisiest one, and the lager stand is a mix. You've got the away fans, a lot of older fans that sit in the upper tier behind the press box. So I don't know what the answer is. I don't think it's light shows, and I don't think it's kind of pre-match entertainment. I really don't know. I would say on Tuesday night against Leyton Orient, there was very, very, very little to get behind. And I know you sort of think, well, that's when the fans need to pull you out of the hole. I get that, but it's freezing cold, and the players gave you nothing outside of the final few minutes to grab onto and unleash that racecourse roar for. So that's a long-winded way to say I don't know why the atmosphere's been and is seemingly crap at the minute at home.
There's a couple of points I want to make on this. One point I'd make is I do kind of think it's just the general change in modern football. I know we can talk about there's some spectacular European atmospheres, and they are very notable, the grounds they're at, and you talk about them as sort of bucket list destinations. Doing our job and covering lots of Premier League matches, I've been to Old Trafford, been to Anfield. I was at Tottenham at the weekend. The atmosphere is pretty bad in all those stadiums.
They're bad.
Really bad. The Tottenham game in particular at the weekend, watching them beat Man United, was awful. It was so just passive. And lots of fans, the amount of fans who were just stood openly in the sort of gangway down to their seats, just filming, while the game's going on, just stood up filming the match, and they were getting shouted at by fans like, just watch the fucking match, just watch the game, that's what you're here for. That kind of sort of football tourism. And again, that's not a criticism, because that's what makes clubs money. It makes season tickets don't make club's money. So there's an interest in them getting as many sort of day trippers in as possible in that sense. Get them to go to the club shop. They buy the scarf, they buy the programme, they buy it all. That is the market for football. And you get it at every ground. I also think another quirk is of modern football, we can now all get free Wi-Fi in the racecourse. So you're going to check the League One scores. You've got to check the Champions League scores. You've got to check the EFL Trophy score. So you're not really watching the game as much. You also get the aspect that it's a cold Tuesday night in North Wales. It's very difficult to get excited about watching Wrexham against Leyton Orient because we've been so spoilt in recent years, particularly with the games we've had. And, it's just the overload of sort of emotion. And it's very expensive to watch Wrexham. Most people will have been at work that day. Lots of them will have only just finished and raced straight to the race course to get there. So,
Rich, on that about Leyton Orient, you can't really get motivated for games like that, which
I know you're playing the team who won bloody FA Cup goal of the round. So
but I'm saying is we might need to reset the bar of what the standard atmosphere is, because if it's Notts County at home, that's not achievable on the regular. That is the highest stakes game with one of the best moments we've had in recent years. Birmingham, I don't think that's a standard which you can hold all these games to. There's games coming up where we're going to be at home to Burton Albion. Now, I don't want to be too disparaging. I'm sure we'll give James Jones and John Daddy Bodvarsson a nice welcome back. But I'm saying is, if that's 0-0 for a while, it's not going to be a kind of Hall of Fame level atmosphere. And like I say, you've done games like that. We're not going to suddenly be La Bombonera with Boca Juniors. It's a different culture. We're not going to be River Plate. Do you know what I mean? And I think if I saw some people saying, my voice is going as if it was a really good atmosphere and I was there. It's hoarse when I wasn't even there. Anyway, sidetrack. I saw some people saying, about Notts County and about Birmingham and about Yeovil, on that Tuesday night, it was a massive game in the promotion race. And there are others like Stockport at home in the FA Trophy semi-final. All of those games are like outliers to the norm. Leyton Orient is a normal league game. Do you know what I mean? That's the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah, that's the kind of point I want to make as well, is that the National League season, the stakes were so high because it was either finish first or you're not guaranteed promotion. You have to finish first. We've been there for 15 years. We've put so much investment in it. We're the heavy favourites to win the league. We're in a title race where one draw kills it. That's promotion gone, potentially. The stakes were so high. Since we got to the Football League, the pressure's been off. And even this season, again, we can get analytical and we can criticise performances. That's all valid in the context of that season's gone. But ultimately, if we lose at home to Leyton Orient, it doesn't matter. We're still third in League One. Like, we are living the dream. We are living the dream. And that's kind of, I think, another unquantifiable problem, is that since we got to the Football League, the results obviously do matter, but they just don't matter as much as they did in the National League, because there was 15 years of, and before that as well, because getting relegated from the Football League was horrible. There's, almost 2 decades of heartache, of despair, of broken dreams and promises and falling flat. And it all came together in that magical season. And since then, we've got promoted again. And we said it at the time, it almost felt a bit anticlimactic because we hadn't suffered for it. And even if we get promoted again this season, it would be incredible. It'd be one of the all-time great modern football feats, genuinely. But we've not really suffered for it. And I do think that is part of it. I think you look at lots of these grounds where there's a great atmosphere, and it's teams who don't just win every single week. You kind of need that jeopardy. And that is the weird quirk of it. I'm obviously not going to say I want Wrexham to start losing us to have 10 years in League One, because the atmosphere might be great. But I do just think that's kind of a byproduct of it, and that's fine. It's just that's something we maybe have to accept, is that we've had far bigger games with much more at stake, and now there is so much more license to lose matches. And
what I'm hearing is Rich wants a double relegation to go back to the National League, where there's jeopardy again, basically. Well, we've got to play Oldham, and we've got to win against Barnet to go up, basically.
Yeah. But that's what I mean. I just think there is that quirk, and the games make the atmosphere themselves. Tuesday night games tend to be better than Saturday afternoon games. That early kickoff against Bolton will be very peculiar because they'll have a fantastic away following again. But we're not going to be up for that, I don't think.
But look, in the next week, Rich, let's end this segment on this before we get onto the kind of Mansfield and and Peterborough, but you get Mansfield out the way. You're then going to have a cup semi-final at home under the
Virtue
lights.
Trophy. I spoke to Dewi, who sits in front of me at the race course, sits in front of me in the tech end, and I didn't go to the Virtue Trophy semi-final. Put my hands up. I didn't go.
The quarterfinal.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Semi-final. I can't go because of work. He said he went to the quarterfinal, and he said the atmosphere against Bolton was awful.
Now,
because they took so many away fans and they outsung us for most of the game, and because we didn't have the upper tech end open. That's kind of part. We need the antagonist sort of vitriol towards each other.
I agree, but I'm saying that you get into you get that final whistle. Jay Rodriguez has scored. We're going to Wembley.
Yeah.
That feeling, you bottle that up, and everyone will go, "Wow, what a night at the racecourse! That was amazing." And then Bolton, we're packing out early kickoff on TV. We're loud and proud. We're going to Wembley. If that's the case, Bolton are going to be packing out. You heard how noisy they were, and suddenly you could have two games where suddenly it flips back. The atmosphere is great, and then you get to Rotherham at home on my birthday. Just shout out anyone who sees me in advance of that. International Women's Day as well, we should say. That might be naff at home against Rotherham.
I'd also say,
you know what I mean? And then suddenly it comes back to, well, the atmosphere's crap. It's always going to fluctuate depending on the size of the game. That's normal.
Yeah, and again, I'd also say that look back to the 2022 FA Trophy, Notts County in the quarterfinal and Boreham Wood in the round 16, but dreadful atmospheres. Stockport in the semi-final, biblical scenes.
And I think I watched that Boreham Wood game. I think Callum McFadden had like 2 assists or 3 assists or something crazy.
I think it was 2 actually. Yeah,
but it was the stands weren't full. It was a relative non-event, but yet I'll be talking about that Stockport game, that Liam McAlinden tackle, that Jordan Davis pass, and that Paul Mullin chip for decades. Yeah, unbelievable moment.
And again, that is part of what we talk about, these unquantifiable things, is that the actual game itself does have a real big impact on it. And if you look at Tuesday night in particular, it's Wrexham, but they are at home to a team below them in the league. I know Leyton Orient are the informed team. Historically, it's not a rivalry. I know Leyton Orient did us over in National League, and for a certain section of fans, we really want to win that just because Macaulay Bond still haunts my nightmares. But you're playing a team who's lower than you in the division. They brought one tier of fans. It wasn't a massive away following. They were very good. They were really good away support, I must say, for those who did come. And we were winning 1-0. And there is kind of, I don't want to say entitlement so much, but there's just an expectation that we just win that. And I think it just becomes very flat because it's a boring game. They're all over us the first 20 minutes. Then we score. And it almost feels like, here we go again. We go win this 1-2-0. And it just didn't happen. And then, you've paid your money. You want to see Wrexham win. This Wrexham team is much better than teams you've seen in the past. You expect them to push on and to show more. We've got probably the most pound for pound most talented Wrexham team of my lifetime in actual terms of quality. I've got Stephen Fletcher there, McLean, Jay Rodriguez. We've got Premier League players on the pitch here. This is the most talented Wrexham squad who should be playing better football. And I think it's understandable to be frustrated and to feel aggrieved by that and to not be inspired when you feel that the team can play better than they are doing. So, yeah, I don't think there's a quick fix for this atmosphere issue.
Right, let's round it out because we're nearly at an hour. We had a bit of a hiccup trying to get a Mansfield fan on, so we're going to see if we can get Mansfield and Peterborough previews uploaded to our YouTube prior to those games. Because the one Rich did with Trotter Chatter, I think it is, the Bolton podcast, went down quite well. We've obviously done it a few times. What's that?
Fantastic. It's good to have some feedback.
It went down well. It got a decent number of views. So I was as surprised as anyone, Rich. Don't get me wrong. I was as shocked as anyone.
That was mid-illness as well, I must say.
Mid-illness. Well, you were a trooper and it went down well. Teed up the Virtue Trophy. But what do you do? Because it's 2 games in 2 competitions. Is it strongest 11 for both? Is it Howard in one, Okonkwo in the other? Does Dan Scarr play in either game? Does O'Connor? What do you do with O'Connor? Does Evans come back in? There's quite a few calls for Gorgeous George to come back in. Has Longman done enough to start now? What I will say quickly on McLean is he's done very, very well to not get that yellow. I don't want to jinx him. He has got to get to 30, up to and including 35 games without getting another yellow to avoid that 2-match ban. So the threshold will go up and then it'd be a 3-match ban.
We said that was Burton at home, I think.
I think so. So that means he's played 31 now, and he's still that 1 yellow away. Now that could happen at any time. I thought he might have got it away at Northampton when he came steaming in to support Max, who was getting thrown around, and ended up with Max getting the yellow card, which was absolutely ridiculous. What do you do then for Mansfield? Because they were a very tough opponent, I thought, at the racecourse. That was a televised game as well. They're always a little bit of a thorn in our side. If we do get past them, it's 1-0. It's very tight games. Field Mill is not the easiest place to go. The pitch is not incredible there. I'm not sure whether they're still blaming S4C, as they have done previously on this podcast, for the issues. What are you doing team-wise? Are you ripping it up? Are you giving it a go again with what you had and saying, lads, we've just got to be better and go with it again? Or do you change it drastically?
Well, over the last 10 games, Mansfield are 22nd in the form table.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Over the last 5 games, they're rock bottom of League One in the form table. They've taken 1 point for the last 5. I just think you don't change it. You don't overreact to what we saw on Tuesday night. We're still a very good football team. I think you make 2 or 3 changes just to freshen it up, but you don't go wholesale. You don't try and reinvent the wheel for this one. I think you keep the same goalkeeper. You maybe even keep the same back three, to be honest, because you change them maybe just for change's sake. Maybe you just need to settle upon them. I'd change a wing back, as we said already, either McLean or Barnett. I'd put Longman in from the start. I'd put Cannon into one of the central midfield roles instead of Matty James, probably, for this one away from home. And I'd like to see Smith and Marriott. So they're my 3 changes. I'd go Longman, Cannon, and Marriott into the side. I don't rip it apart or anything. I don't try and tell us to do something new for this one. Mansfield are a team, they flirted with playoffs earlier in the season. They are still got a lot of quality, but they've been beaten left, right, and centre in the last couple of weeks. And I still think that, there's a difference between arrogance and sort of respecting your opponent. You still respect Mansfield. You don't go there and just think you're going to win, but you still feel confident that you can go and do so. And I think this is one of those games where you can put your season back on track. If you go to Mansfield this weekend and win comfortably, I don't mind that you lost at home to Leyton Orient, if that's the response.
I'm going to put Okonkwo back in. I'm going to put Longman in for Barney. I'm going to go with McLean because I think his experience, and that'll shock everyone who thinks I've got this massive agenda against James McLean. So I'm going to go with McLean. I think Barney off the bench for the last half an hour could be absolutely ruthless.
He scored against him, didn't he? That 1-0 at home.
I think he could be lethal. I agree with you. Probably stick with the same back 3. I'm actually going to do something fairly drastic in midfield. I'm going to put Evans in.
And Luke Young is captain for one time.
Luke Young, Luke Summerfield, and Marcus Kelly. No, I'm going to go
on the bench, is he? Or?
I'm going to go George Evans as someone to sit in front of the back 5, essentially, back 3, back 5, and then I'm going to go Cannon and Rathbone, and I'm going to say push. Really,
so you're
really.
Saying James and Dobson out. Yeah. Or just George in.
I'm gonna. James wouldn't even be on the bench. I'd have Dobson on the bench. I wouldn't have James involved, and I would play James in the semi-final against Peterborough. I'd just take Dobson out of it just for the firing. I'd just change it because you can always bring him on. He's got great energy again. I just think Rathbone and Cannon, you can say to them, just go. We've got essentially 4 centre backs now with Evans. He can slot in there, and even if O'Connell wants to come drive it out, you can have Evans slip back in more naturally. I feel like. Talking about players wanting to come out, press out from the back. So I'm going to go Rathbone, Cannon, Evans. And up top, I'm going to give it one more go with Smith and Rodriguez. I'm just going to give Rodriguez another go. And then for me, for the semi-final, I think you play the other keeper that you don't play. So I think you play the alternative keeper, whoever that is. If it's Howard plays against Mansfield, you play Okonkwo. And if Okonkwo, Howard. I would play Scar, Max, and Brunt.
O'Connor, no?
I don't know. I think in I don't know. I would change. I would freshen it up. Sunday and Wednesday is not super far apart. I would put Barney in from the start if I drop him out for Longman. I'd go back to Dobson. I'd probably go back. I won't go back to James either. I'm really not going back to Matty James. Sorry about that, but I think he's not. He's too slow. He's too sideways backwards for me. I'd go Dobson again. I'd go Rathbone and maybe Elliot Lee if he's back. If he's not, then you go with Cannon or you go. Who else could you even go with in there? I don't know who else you could even go. It's got to be Cannon, hasn't it? I don't think Josh Adams is a factor anymore. And then I would maybe be looking at a Marriott and who knows, Marriott and Smith, or maybe start with Fletcher or something. I don't know, change it up. Ashfield, yeah, Ashfield for the semi-final. I wouldn't have any issues with that at all if it was Rathbone, Ashfield, and Dobson for the semi-final. You know,
Mo and Mullen up top.
We're coming up against poor teams this week. You've just said there the worst team over the last 5 games.
Yeah, 1 point from the last 5.
Peterborough cannot be much higher. They've been dross as well. Pardon me. They've been absolutely dross. So
here's one for you then. Over the last 10 matches in League One, Mansfield 22nd in the form table.
Peterborough 23rd, are they?
Peterborough 23rd.
Yeah. So
they're 7 points out of possible 30.
So they're dross. So that's so bring on Matty James and George Dobson to secure it up. You've got to go for these teams. Go for the jugular. Stand on their neck, basically, and just.
Here's another stat. I know I'm going for some wild stats now. I'm not sure how this works, but it kind of does. Over the last 20 matches in League One, Mansfield are the worst team in the league. Over the last 20 matches.
Right.
Over the last 25 matches, Peterborough are the worst team in the league.
Damn.
So, you are playing 2 teams you should beat. And we said on last week's podcast, we sort of ended it saying, I want 4 points. We got 3 in the end. I want 2 wins by the time we next record.
By the time we next record, which we should say will be slightly later because the game is on the Wednesday night, the Virtue Trophy. So it'll probably be a Thursday night release, that one, just as a warning in advance. By the time we record next, we need to have beaten Mansfield on the telly. No excuses for that. And we need to be in the final. We need to be in the final of the Virtue Trophy up against Birmingham.
Yeah. And if things have all gone according to plan, the intro to next week's podcast will just be Wrexham fans singing Wembley. And if that happens, it's been a good week.
Fingers crossed.
Thank you so much once again for joining us on Rob, Ryan, Red, the Wrexham podcast, brought to you in association with Red 10 People Development. As always, there was lots of talking points in this podcast. Atmosphere, the goalkeeper debate, the strongest 11. Did we overreact to the Leyton Orient defeat? Were the tactics to blame? What happens next for Wrexham? Let us know. Rob Ryan Red on all the socials, robryanred@gmail.com. Thank you so much to Red 10 People Development for their continued support of the podcast. And thank you to Wrexham-based band Hypnotic for the music, the stings that we use as well. Hey, 3rd in the league. We could be off to Wembley next week as well. It really is a horrible time to be a Wrexham fan, isn't it? Take care. We'll see you again next time. All the best.
Wrexham AFC podcast with Nathan Salt and Rich Faye.